as a believer, that moves me. To think about this man, Jesus, that we come every week to worship, that we come on a regular basis, maybe you get up daily to talk to think about who this man is and what he has done moves me. I hope it moves you too. Jesus. As I said earlier, this is the least frilly, if that's a word, is that right? The least frilly series you're going to probably ever hear me preach. And maybe, I'm not saying my preaching, but the topic is probably the most important I've ever preached. Jesus. Come and see. Come and see this God, this man who said that he was God. This man who went to a cross for you and for me. Come and see him. And the world is out there and they're looking for answers. And if we're not careful as Christians, we're giving them answers to questions they're not even asking. And we're giving them the wrong answer sometimes. And we've got to understand that there's one answer, and that answer is what? Jesus. You can say it more boldly than that. It's okay. Jesus. And we have that answer. And Jesus is the one, not the Jesus that we've defined wrongly, not the Jesus that people take and manipulate to be the Jesus that fits the things that they've already believed to be true, but the Jesus of the Bible. The Jesus who went to the cross. The Jesus who was born in a lowly, in Bethlehem and put into a lowly manger. That Jesus who loves us. And hear me, who can change the world. That Jesus who can change your friendships, who can change the people in your life, if they'll see that Jesus like you've seen that Jesus. Make all the difference in the world. In John chapter 1, and you can turn there, we're going to be in John chapter 2 today, but in John chapter 1, Jesus is calling his disciples. Now there's some people, I'm reading a guy right now that's got me a little confused. I don't think he's wrong. It's just one of those critical thinking things that he's got me looking at things differently. But I've always kind of had this idea that Jesus called his apostles, his disciples, and they began to follow him, and he began teaching them immediately. But this guy has a theory that Jesus... He called these 12 guys to come and to begin to follow him, but they just began to follow him around, and his teaching actually began a year or year and a half into that following around. That really, he just said what our series is, come and see. Come and see what's going on, what God's doing. And we don't have all the details, it jumps ahead to where his teachings are. And so a lot of times I think we just think immediately he began teaching them, but I think he just asked people to come and follow. And that's what I want to do in this series. For you and for anyone in your life, that's what I want you to do for them as well. Hey, you know what? I know you've got a lot of opinions about religion. I know you've got a lot of opinions about church. I know you've got a lot of opinions about Jesus and about God. But would you just come and see? Would you just come and see Jesus for who he is? Let me try to reveal him to you. That's what we should be saying. That's what I'm saying to you. That's what we should be saying to people. So in John chapter 1, he's calling these guys. Verses 38 and 39, this is what it says. When Jesus turned and saw them following him, these two disciples, he asked, "What are you looking for?" And they said, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying?" And he answered, "Come and see." So the two men went with Jesus and saw where he was staying, and they stayed there with him that day. We're going to begin this series today, and that's simply, we want to do the same thing. You don't have to know everything to invite someone to come and see in your life, whether it's at church or just walking in life with you. You don't have to know all the answers in the Bible. You don't have to understand everything. But just as Jesus said, come and see, come and follow. Let's see where he's leading us. And so I want you to open your minds up for the next several weeks, about 2.5 months. And I want you to just begin to open your mind to who Jesus is, and to what Jesus has done, and to what he expects from us. Today we begin in John chapter 2, seeing Jesus, who he is, the miracle worker. We like miracles, don't we? Iris has shared with us her story, a miracle that was incredibly fulfilled in her life, and one that didn't get exactly what she was looking for. We like miracles. We love a good miracle story, don't we? We love a story where it has a good, happy ending. I looked up the definition for miracle. A miracle is this. It's an event not explicable by natural or scientific laws. That's what the dictionary says. It is an event that's not explicable by natural or scientific laws. An effect or extraordinary event in the physical world that surpasses all known human or natural powers and is ascribed to a supernatural cause. We would probably agree with that, right? It's something that goes against nature. It's something that's bigger than nature. It doesn't follow the scientific laws. Let me give you an example. Some of you have been here long enough, you probably heard this story, but my father in 1977 was dying of cancer. And there would be times my mom would wake us up in the middle of the night because they would be going to the hospital. And at this point, I don't remember when she woke us up, how long we'd been at our friend's house, but we got to go stay at friend's house. Sometimes we had to hang out in the waiting rooms, and back then kids didn't get to go up on the floor, so we hung out down in the waiting room down on the first floor. But for some reason we weren't there. He was in Houston at MD Anderson, 80 miles away. We were at a friend's house. All I remember is this. Our friend's family came in and said, we all are heading to the church. It wasn't a Wednesday. It wasn't a Sunday. I'm not sure why we were going to the church, but we went to the church. We got there, and the entire church was full. It wasn't a gigantic church, but there was at least 80 to 100 people there. And we were sitting there, and they began to pray for my dad. You got to understand, I'm 10 years old. I don't know what's going on with my dad, but they began to pray for my dad. And these people are crying. There's this fervent prayer going on. It's the most intense prayer I think I've ever been involved with at that point for sure in my life. And these people were crying out for my father. And I don't know where my mindset was, but all I remember is we went home, and I don't remember when my mom told us the whole story, but what had happened that night, my dad was in Houston. He was on an operating table, and his blood pressure went to 0. And as we prayed, my dad came back to life. My dad told a story about how he could see his body laying on the operating table. And that church came together and prayed, and there was a miracle that happened. My dad went to 0 on blood pressure, and he came back to life. Now, you can say the doctors did it. That's fine. I believe the doctors played a hand, but I believe they had the hand of God inside of their hands when they did it. We like miracles, don't we? But I have a question for you. I don't know if I agree with the definition of miracle, that it always goes outside the bounds of the explainable. Let me give you an example of that. I'll never forget the day that my daughter and my son were born. They weren't born on the same day, but I remember. Oh, right. I'll never forget it. I will never forget the very first thought that came through my mind when I saw her for the first time. I will never forget what went through my mind. You know what it was? Wow, that's part me and part Charlotte. That is amazing. I began to cry. You know, I'm a crier, so it wasn't hard for that to happen. I began to cry as I held my daughter, and I thought, this is amazing. Now I have a question. Can we explain how that happened? Can we explain how my daughter was born? I'm not going to. There's kids here. Can we explain? We can, can't we? We know. There are laws of science that tell us how my daughter was born. Does that mean it wasn't a miracle? See what I'm saying? See, I think we got to understand that a miracle can be something that is beyond explanation, and those are wonderful stories. But I'm afraid sometimes we miss the miracles every day in our life that are normal things that we can explain in science or in anything else, and we forget that that's a miracle. A relationship, a child, a parent, and we forget. See, miracles, I think, are so much bigger than that. In John chapter 2, we get the story of Jesus' first miracle. Follow along with me if you have your Bibles. It says, on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. And the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does that have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. And his mother, I'm going to add a parenthetical. His mother, ignoring what he said, said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people had drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This, the first of his signs Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory. And the disciples believed in him. Jesus has the disciples. I don't know which part of his ministry this is, as far as if you believe what I said earlier, that maybe they were just following him. But he's beginning, his time has not yet come, but it's about to start happening. His time is about to come, and he's about to start sharing with these disciples what he's here for and what it's about. But here he is, and they're following him, and he's been invited to this wedding. I don't know about you. You ever go to a wedding and you just want to chill out, right? You just want to, maybe you don't. Maybe you like, my personality, I go to a wedding, I just want to sit in the back, I just want to hang out. Hey, that's great, celebrate, hug them, eat some cake, and get out of there, right? That's me. Jesus, I don't know what he wants, but it looks like he's not wanting to make a scene. He's there, and he just wants to kind of hang out and enjoy it. But Mary, Jesus' mother, had other plans. She saw a need, and she asked Jesus to help. Now, I do have a question that came to my mind. Jesus hadn't performed a miracle yet. How did his mother know he could? I don't know if she was looking for a miracle or if she was just looking for him to do something. Hey, you are the Son of God. Surely you can do something, right? She was a persistent mother, and Jesus was a submissive and obedient son. We read that in Luke chapter 2 when his parents, he's in the temple, and Jesus they tell him to come home, and even though he wants to continue being about his father's business at 12 years old, he follows his family home. Probably a good idea. The wine was gone. Now, you got to understand, the good wine was gone, and the poor wine was gone. They were out. Now, I want you to process this with me for just a moment. If you're having a wedding, now, back in Asia, weddings are a big deal. They last for days, okay? It's still to this day. In India, we saw pictures of weddings, and I mean, they last a long, long time, all right? And so, that's going to take a lot of money. Relatively speaking, okay? In that culture, that's going to take a lot of money. And so, but we do this here too most of the time. We save up, don't we? We save up for the wedding. And some people can spend stupid money on weddings, and some people just have a little bit, and that's okay. But we save up, and we try to spend what we can afford for a wedding. You're with me, right? So I'm assuming that this couple and this family has been saving up. As a matter of fact, in their culture, they were also giving dowries and things for it. So there's a lot of expense involved. I'm assuming that when they served wine at this wedding, it was the best they could afford. Is that a fair assumption? They had saved up, maybe for months, maybe since the little girl was little, and they were giving some pretty good wine. Or it was the best that they could afford. They had given that, and as the master, these would have some say head waiter. They would have these guys that were in charge of. I guess it's like a wedding coordinator. It would have been what we would think of today. And he was in charge, and he said, "Hey, wait a minute." When this miracle took place, he said, "Wait a minute. You had the good wine, and then you served the poor wine." I don't know if the headmaster hadn't gotten drunk yet, so he knew when the poor wine came out. I'm not sure. But anyway, most of the time he says, you give the good stuff, then you wait till people don't really know what they're drinking, and then you give the bad stuff. But what Jesus gave them, listen to me, was better than what they had saved for. What Jesus gave them when he made this water become wine was better than what they had saved months for. It's like, wait a minute. In other words, compared to what you served earlier, or compared to this, what you served earlier was swill. That was horrible. This is incredible what you served now. We'll get to that in just a moment. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But you got to understand, this was just ordinary water. And there's a word here, and you don't need to know what the Greek word is. It doesn't really matter. But when it says this water that had now become wine, that word comes from a root word ginomai is the root word, if you want to know. And it implies that something has happened that is different from a previous state. In other words, this water didn't just taste like wine. They didn't have, what are those things called? The little juicer things that you squirt in your water so you don't... Jesus didn't just like get a little bit of wine and, squirt it in the water. This had really, the word here says it had changed from its previous state from water into wine. There was a real miracle. It defied the laws of science and physical explanation. It was an impossible thing. And because of this, Jesus revealed His glory by showing that He revealed who He was. Now, let me ask you a question. When God has revealed Himself to you in a miracle, do you acknowledge that God is who He is? Does it make you realize who He is? When something happens in your life, do you understand? If you go to the doctor and they say the cancer's gone, now as believers, don't you go, God is good, right? And so when Jesus did this miracle, all of a sudden, if Mary didn't know, she knew now. Wow. This is the Son of God. This is God. He has the power of God. Hang on to that thought. We're going to use that to conclude some things. But what about you? What about when you need a miracle? You see, why did Jesus perform this miracle? I had someone ask me this week, why did you choose this story, this miracle? Of all the miracles Jesus did, why this one? What's the first one? I think it's good for it reveals. I could have chosen a lot of miracles. If you read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you're going to read all kinds of things that Jesus did. He fed 5,000 plus people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 little fish. He did all kinds. He walked on water. He healed people. He brought Lazarus back from the dead. He did all kinds of miracles. But why doesn't He always perform miracles? Especially when we really need a miracle. Why don't I get my miracle? Let me ask it this way. Why did He save my dad on that operating table in 1977 only to allow him to die in 1978? Why did He raise Lazarus from the dead in John chapter 11? Only to, I don't know about you, but I don't think Lazarus is still walking around today, right? So he died later at some point. Why did He raise him from the dead? When you need a miracle, when you're begging for a miracle, what's going to happen? These are tough questions. And they have caused many people to walk away. I always think about Ted Turner. Some of you know who he is. Some older people probably do. The younger ones may not know. Ted Turner is the one who started and I think he still owns Turner Broadcasting, TBS, TNT. And I don't know if he was a believer, but he was at least in a household of faith, and his mom got sick. And when his mom passed, he prayed that his mom would live, and his mom didn't live, and so he walked away and became an atheist from that point on. Now, it happens at this turning point, these miracle things that when we ask God to help us see, Iris, or when we ask God to heal somebody, or when we ask God to make this thorn go away, or to make us be able to have the money we need to have, or whatever that miracle you're looking for, and then when God doesn't give us that miracle, there's a lot of people who just turn away from God. And can I say it this way? I'm going to be careful. It's not my notes, so I want to be careful how I say this. If a miracle is, if an answered miracle is the only reason you're turning to God, I don't know if you're turning to God for the right thing. Just like Iris said, great way you said this. I need to want Jesus more than I want what I want. And if I only, in other words, what we do is we turn Jesus into Santa Claus, or as Kirk was telling me this week, into a vending machine. Jesus becomes his vending machine. I put my money in and I push this button. Wait a minute, Jesus, I pushed that button. That said I was going to get a Snickers. I didn't get a Snickers. I got an apple. That's not what I wanted. I wanted Snickers. Right? And we turn God into this vending machine. And because we don't get what we ask for or what we want. If we're going to understand who He is as a miracle worker, we've got to process this. And I got to be honest with you, when you leave today, I don't know if I'm going to give you all the answers that are going to make you go, okay, I understand now. You got to deal with this in your heart with God and that struggle and that journey and that relationship that you have with Him. And it doesn't help, does it? And I'm not going to name names, but it doesn't help when we have preachers out there and people out there who tell us, if you have faith in God, He'll give you everything you want, right? That doesn't help. I think I know the answers, but is there anyone in here who God has given you everything you want? I'm putting mine down because no, right? So if that theory is correct, there's not anyone in here that's of faith. If that theory is correct, every one of us is doomed. We don't know God. I don't believe that, obviously. So why? Why do you think God doesn't always give a miracle? Why doesn't He answer our prayers the way we want Him to answer them? I have some things. Let me just run through these. I think, first of all, sometimes what we're asking for isn't good for us. Sometimes God doesn't give us a miracle because what we're asking isn't good for us. We think it's what we want. We think it's what we're supposed to have, but it's not what we're supposed to have, and so it's not good for us. If you're in here praying that God's going to help you win the lottery, come talk to me afterward. Because it might not be good for you. I'm just going to tell you right now. And you think, oh, yeah, it would. Okay. Yeah. It's ruined a lot of people. It's ruined some people that haven't won. That's a whole other sermon. We won't go there. Sometimes what we want isn't good for us. And so maybe that's why He gives us a miracle. Maybe He hasn't given us a miracle because what He wants for us is better than what we're asking for. Now, I know that some of you, this grapes, this is like, pebbles in your shoes, right? I mean, because I prayed for this to happen. Let's say it's someone, you prayed for someone not to die and they died. Really? You're going to tell me that was better for me? I didn't say I understand it. I didn't say I could give you all the answers for it. But maybe the reason God doesn't give us what we want is because what we have, what He has for us is better. If God had allowed me to marry Rhonda Morgan, I would not have met Charlotte Slide. I'm going to earn some points right here, guys. Because what God had for me is way better than what I wanted. Garth Brooks even knows that. Some of you will get that. Is that right? Is that who's saying that? I'm not coming here. Yeah, okay. Sometimes here's what Isaiah says. For my thoughts, God says, are not your thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return to it without watering the earth, and making it bud and flourish, so it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the fields will clap their hands. Instead of the thorn bush will grow the juniper, and instead of briars the myrtle will grow. This will be for the Lord's renown, for an everlasting sign that will endure forever. Sometimes what God wants for you is better than what you want. And I can't explain that in human terms. Listen, it's okay that you go, what I want, I wish I could get what I want. If you didn't wish that you get what you want, you wouldn't want it. Got that? I understand. And it's okay that you go, God, that's not fair. It's okay. As long as you don't walk away from Him. See, I don't even have time to go into this. This is a whole nother sermon. Because you might be asking the question, then why do we pray? Why do we ask God for anything? If He's not going to heal our husband, if He's not going to give us what we want, why pray? I don't have time to answer that fully, but let me answer it this way. I believe that God wants you in relationship with Him. God already knows what He's going to do. And so, it's not that your prayer doesn't matter, because what your prayer is doing is it's creating relationship with you and Him. And it's teaching you. Anybody ever been taught when God didn't answer your prayer? I already gave one of my examples. He does teach us through those unanswered prayers. You see, maybe the miracles don't come because we aren't engaged in that relationship with Jesus. We're unavailable or we're distracted. Anybody distracted in this place? Some of you don't know what I just said. I mean, it's our society. What did you just say? Yeah, we're distracted. We're unavailable. We don't know what's going on. And so we don't know what God's doing. Because maybe we didn't get up this morning. We didn't spend any time with Him. How can we know what God is doing if we're not spending time with God? So we don't have this relationship with Him, and so therefore, when things go the way that we think they're supposed to go, which is fleshly, which is the world, then we don't understand why God didn't answer the way we thought He should answer. But it's because we don't understand, because we're distracted by all the things of the world, and because we're unavailable. We're in a relationship with everybody else. I've got 564 friends on Facebook, but I don't know God. Maybe He did give you a miracle, you just missed it. Because you're too distracted over here. He wants to build that relationship with you. He knows what He's going to do. Maybe He doesn't give you a miracle because He just wants us to wait and to trust that He knows what's best. I know that you're going to answer this right, okay? If you don't do this just because I tell you to. But how many of you believe that God is trustworthy and you can trust Him with everything in your life? Raise your hand if you believe that. I think we all do. But when it comes down to the application of that, when it comes down to doing that, it's like all of a sudden we go, well, I don't know, man. God, I really want this to happen. And God's like, no, I need you just to wait. You raised your hand at church, so you're in trouble now. God's going to say this back to you. You raised your hand at church and said you trusted me. You knew that I could do everything. So wait and trust. So what are we supposed to learn from this? Well, Jesus is a miracle, but so what? What are we supposed to learn? Why would this make me want to follow Him? If I see Jesus as a miracle worker, I've said a lot more things that you might be going, people aren't going to want to follow Him because they're not getting what they want. See, it's us learning to understand who God is. And when we begin to understand who He is, then we're okay to follow Him. If we continue, listen, here's how I want you to remember this. If we continue to define Jesus the way we think He is when that's not the way He really is, we are not going to ever follow the real Jesus. Because we're still looking for that vending machine. We've got to see who He is. And we've got to follow the one that we see in front of us. So what do we learn? Let me give you these real quick. I think, first of all, we learn that Jesus really cares what's important to me. When I see, was it a big deal that Jesus, that he turned water into wine? It was for those wedding guests, wasn't it? Was it a big deal that He fed 5,000 people? It was for the hungry people that day, right? You ever taken kids somewhere and didn't have food for them? And the parents were grateful He fed that day, right? Does it matter? Yeah, He cares about what you care about. All that stuff I said about He knows what's best for you, He's not up there some cosmic killjoy that's trying to get you to, I'm going to show them I'm God. I'm going to make it hard for them. He loves you. He cares about you. It makes me think of junior church and prayer requests. You ever done children's church? You ever ask preschool kids, Nate, for a prayer request? What do you get? My fish is dying or died, right? Or whatever your parents told them happened to the fish, It's in the sewer system somewhere. But anyway, have you ever done that? Little kids, man, they don't care. I want mom to quit smoking. They'll tell you that. I love kids, man. They'll throw their hands up and they'll just start, what do you want to pray about? And you'll be there forever. And as soon as one kid mentions their dog, you got to hear about every kid's dog, right? That's just the way it is. And sometimes I've been guilty of not being like God. Okay, that's great. Let's pray for your dog. God cares about your dog. God cares about your cancer. God cares about your marriage. God cares about your checkbook. God cares about what you care about. He loves you. And I think we see that in these miracles. He met this need even though it was small. It looks kind of small. He met this need. Even though He said, I don't want to do it. My hour's not yet come. He still did. What else do we learn? We also learn that Jesus has the power of God in Him. Is there any denying this? Okay, if you don't believe this book is true, then what I'm about to say, you can throw it out. But if you believe this book is true, when you read the miracles, is there any doubt in your mind that Jesus is God? Anybody? No. I'll answer that for you. If you believe this book is true, then what He has done proves that He is God. And there is no one but Jesus. There is no one like Jesus. It proves the power that He has, but it also proves that He has power to change anything. This little miracle shows us that He has the power to change anything. He can change water to wine. Do we just gloss over that? Do we just I mean, just, well, yeah, Jesus turned water into wine. Okay, the next song. You know, I mean, do we really? Read that again. Water became wine. He didn't squirt Gatorade in it. Water became wine. That's huge. And if Jesus can turn water into wine, He can turn a sinner into a saint. If Jesus can turn water into wine, He can turn a sinner into a saint. He can turn someone who is seeking into a believer. You guys have people in your life and you think there's no way they'll ever turn to Jesus. My God has the power. Jesus has the power to change them, to turn them into someone. Now, if someone's not seeking, they're probably not going to turn to Jesus. I get that. But God has the power even to change those people. You see, here's the main idea, the main point for the whole day. I said Jesus is powerful, and I said we get back to this. Listen. Jesus' miracles prove that He is powerful and that He is trustworthy. When I look at the Bible, when I look at this story, when I look at all the miracles of Jesus, when I see Jesus as the miracle worker, it proves to me that He is all-powerful, and it proves to me that He is trustworthy, that I can put my life in His hands, even when I don't get the answer that I want. He is God. And I don't have to like it that I didn't get the answer that I wanted. But I still love Him. And I still follow Him. I didn't ask permission from my wife to say this, but I don't think she'll be offended. You all know this, our story over the last few years, and her losing both of her parents, me losing my mom. And you want to know what my wife has learned from that? And if you've been on Facebook with her, or if you've talked to her, she's probably said this to you. She'll get on there and she begs people. She says, if you still have your mama, you hug her right now. Because you never know when you're not going to have them anymore. Now, it's awful. It's horrible that she lost her mom and dad. It's awful at a human standpoint. But you know who my wife has become because of what God taught her through that? She's not that she didn't love great already, but she's incredible in how she loves people. She sees people who are hurting. She can't help but reach out. I'm not saying she wouldn't be a great person today, but I'm telling you now, she is a greater person today because of what she went through. And because God didn't give her everything she wanted. Oh, she cried out. Every day, she cried out to God, please give me this. She knows that God is powerful. And He can give me the miracle if He wants. But more than that, He's trustworthy. And I'll put my life in His hands. So what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with the miracle worker? Will you recognize the miracles in your life? Those things that maybe don't look like miracles, but really they are. Will you recognize them? Here's the most important thing I think I can tell you about what you're going to do. You need to begin to think about and pray about those people in your life who don't know Jesus. Because they need to see who He is. And if we would let them see who He is, and our unbelievable trust in Him, even in the midst of not getting what we want, but we want Him more than we want what we want, we will begin to change the world. The gospel has that kind of power. So who do you need to invite? I want you to invite him here, that's great. But who do you need to invite into a relationship with you just to study John, the book of John with, and say, come and see, I want to show you who Jesus is. The gospel is powerful, and it can change people's lives. Watch this.
Power. What is power? The ability to enforce your will, brute strength, intelligence, innovation, wealth, influence. We strive for power in the halls of government. We work to expand our influence in the boardroom, the classroom. We struggle to lengthen our lives. Day in, day out, we toil to increase our wealth. But how much control do we really have? Our best laid plans can fall apart in an instant. Our most trusted technology can fail. Our hard-earned investments can evaporate before our very eyes. And no matter how disciplined we are, our bodies grow old and frail. But we are not without hope. Even in our weakness, there is good news for all people, an eternal power beyond human understanding that can soften the hardest heart, heal the deepest wound, bring peace, even joy in any circumstance, and salvation to all who believe. That power is the gospel of Jesus Christ, the only power that lasts.